Hello, everyone. It's Friday Takeaway Podcast, the podcast about last mile delivery industry. And today our guest is James Walker. James, how about you introduce yourself and tell us the
Sure.
status quo of what is your current status in your position right now?
Yeah, so you don't know what to call me, which I like that. So yeah, so still today I am the Chief Executive Officer of Buyk, based here in New York. You and I talked. I think we had a really long conversation. It seems like a lifetime ago, right?
Yes, it
So much
does.
has transpired professionally, personally, in the world of ultra fast grocery and quick commerce, and in the world itself. So first, it's good to see you healthy and safe.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to see you too, and quite excited about our conversation today. Basically, what I wanted to talk to you about today is the survivor bias, to clear out the status quo of Buyk, what really happened, what is going on with the company, and which lessons can we learn from the story of Buyk. As you mentioned, we spoke with you in January, but it feels like a lifetime ago. And back then in January, we have seen the picture of the market that it's an exponential growth of the last mile delivery in general. And in the past few years, it has been like that. And rapid grocery delivery has actually been like the golden boy of this whole movement, getting a lot of hype and getting a lot of investments. However, right now, the situation globally, politically, and economically is quite turbulent, right? And caused by the Russian invasion in Ukraine, entrepreneurs worldwide are facing a lot of challenges right now. And the delivery sector is not an exception. Investors are reevaluating the risks. Customers are looking after their pockets more carefully. Cost is growing. So the first question would be, what changes do you see for the market and the landscape right now?
You know, to answer that question, I think there's a couple of different ways to look at it from a purview standpoint. And I think you know, because you see me posting on LinkedIn and Twitter, I am still a raving fan of quick commerce. And whether that's ultra fast grocery, whether that's food delivery, whether that's delivery of my dry cleaning or my prescription, I want my goods and services quickly, accurately, and with a great customer experience. So I still believe the demand is there. And this is maybe the single most important takeaway, I think, for everyone looking at this space. When you have consumer demand, and I believe the consumer demand is there, and the awareness is still low. This is an under-penetrated market, meaning quick commerce in general, but where there is awareness of these services, the demand is there and the demand is growing. And I think this is really important. Now, the other way to look at this is to look at it from the business side, right? From the investor side. And the phrase that I like to use is, because of the success in many ways of my bosses, the founders of Buyk and the founders of Samacat, they got the world excited about quick commerce with what they did at Samacat. And they had a lot of entrepreneurs around the world jump into this space, and a lot of venture funds got super excited and they bet on the industry. And now I think what you're seeing as this is beginning to mature a little, still super early days, some of these funds are beginning. I don't want to say to rethink their investments, but I think some of the funds are beginning to say, okay, we're still super excited. We still love the trajectory of the overall marketplace. We believe there's all of this demand, but we want to see a route to profitability. When are you going to get there? How are you going to get there? Growth as a top line, or growth in number of units, or growth in transactions, or growth in a database of users is not enough. Show us a route to profitability. So I think some of the things we're seeing with some of the larger players and the moves they're making are because of management's desire and the investors' need to begin to see some profitability. So I think those are pretty material changes.
So the hype is not enough anymore. Right. I mean, there are a lot of people who did a lot for the industry, and I do believe in personalities. For example, Ralph Mansell and Consumer are definitely the ones to have quite a lot of credit as well into bringing the hype, into
Sure.
bringing the interest of the institutional investors and of the society into having another way of how to consume things. That's for sure. But so the main takeaway right now is that this is not enough, and you actually need to show sturdy numbers to get the investments. Did Buyk not have it at the time to get another round of the investment, or what is the status quo of the story of Buyk?
Yeah, so Buyk was a U.S. company, but founded by Slaven Rodion, who you know very well, industry visionaries, and they put together a seed round back last summer of kind of friends and family, as well as investors, primarily from Russia, some from other parts of Europe, and some actually based here in the US. And towards the end of last year, they were in the process of closing a Series A round with similar investors around 275 million. And I believe this is public information that Rodion had shared with a few investors. And then the plan was to move to a Series B here in the US. And
Mhm.
I think Buyk was a really great coming together of this historic duo of entrepreneurs in Rodion and Slava, but a mature US management team. So we felt that we had a great business model, a unique selling proposal, and it really differentiated ourselves from the competitors. And listen, you mentioned Coggin at Gorillas. I am a huge fan of his as well. This is a guy who understands the nuance of the business. He's focused on profitability. He's super smart, and I think we have only begun to see what he and the team that he's put together are going to do. But to answer your question directly, when the invasion of Ukraine happened, that Series A round, not only did that go away, but the ability for our founders to continue to provide bridge funding to get us to a US round basically went away overnight. And it put Buyk, which was destined and planned to be a large company. So Buyk was not about, hey, let's open 5 dark stores per month. Buyk was focused on opening hundreds of locations because we had founders that had this proven business model. So our cash needs were extreme because we were building an organization to have hundreds and hundreds of locations across the United States. And when we lost the ability for our founders to provide that bridge funding, we just simply didn't have time to close a funding round here in the US. And myself, management, and our founders' single biggest concern was our employees. Roydin and Slava are not only good businessmen, but they really care about creating opportunity for people, and they wanted to make sure the employees got paid. And the only way to get enough cash to take care of everyone on payday so people were able to pay their rent and all of the things that people do with their paychecks was to get funding that required us to file for Chapter 11 protection, which is where Buyk is today. We're in the middle of Chapter 11. You may or may not know, here in the US, there's a number of different bankruptcy protections. Chapter 11 is differentiated because it still allows the brand and company a potential exit. So we are liquidating assets to pay back vendors and creditors, but there is still interest in Buyk as a brand. And, while that potential is a small potential, there is the possibility that somebody may, show up and be willing to fund Buyk. But right now, we're liquidating some of the assets to make sure that we take care of creditors and vendors.
Right. Thank you. Thank you very much for a very thorough answer on the status quo and status of Buyk. Probably even close the topic of the past and what happened, I do believe that the primarily and the only reason for Buyk to close is actually the invasion. It's not really the business model that people started questioning now, in terms of giving the examples of Buyk and Fridge No More and Yango Deli that is struggling and Wuplo. We need to understand that all of these companies had the Russian money and had the Russian management teams and investors. And this is the case of the influence of the current war situation in Ukraine, but not as much of a business model. At the same time, we discussed the last time with you that it is a business that is easy to enter, but very much more difficult to keep on going. Was there a way, or is there still a way to save Buyk, or what is the lesson that you could share with the listeners about the current situation of crisis that you guys are experiencing?
Yeah, so I'm gonna hopefully I'll answer your question, and I'm gonna do it a little differently as you normally give me the leash and license to do. Within ultra fast grocery and I think quick commerce also, I think there's a number of routes to profitability, to enterprise level profitability. And if you look at what Samacat did so successfully, they built a business with scale where you had efficiencies in supply chain, in leveraging overhead and SG&A, all of those types of things. And that's the model that Buyk was executing here in the US, is growing to a level where things like private label and distribution, we had synergies and strengths in that because of size and scale. That model is very capital intensive, but I still believe that model has benefits because you become a known brand. You have all the benefits of purchasing strength and leveraging your overhead and what have you. And I'm still a believer in that, build a large company model and get the benefits of economy of scale. Having said that, early days when we realized we were going to have this funding issue at Buyk, we had a very strong management team here in the US. Rodin and Slava were always focused on, James, find the best people. They're very dedicated to the quality of the human capital. We had a great corporate secretary, fantastic CFO. And I worked with them to put together a pivot model, a model that would make Buyk smaller, but really focus on achieving enterprise profitability in less than a year and four-wall profitability in closer to 9 months. So I think there's a number of different routes to profitability. You can grow to a level that you get the economy of scale, but you can also just look at a market, whether that market is New York or Chicago, and really focus on building loyalty in your customer base, perfecting the assortment, courier efficiency, and kind of build in a more traditional method where, you open, 25 or 30 locations in a market, and you work to see those as profitable, and then you go to the next market. So I think there's a lot of focus right now on profitability, and you've got some of the players who are on kind of the first model still, and others that are looking at that second model, and they're really looking at the how can we be profitable on a four-wall basis and then an enterprise basis.
Is there any specific steps that you could recommend right now to the market players of both categories of what they should do to stay sexy for the investment? Because both models would still need money, and I think that it's on top of the minds of most of the players right now. At least it should be, because they will still need more investment to do the transition or keep with the strategies that they already have. Maybe you can break in some steps that you would do right now, as if you, for example, never had these issues and February 24 never happened, what you would do to get faster to this profitability and still adjust to the shaky market landscape.
Yeah, so I love the practice of distillation, right? Let's just boil things down. So part of why I'm still a raving fan, we started this podcast, was me saying, listen, if customers want it, I want to be in the business of fulfilling their needs and demands. Customers want this service. to answer your question, use that same practice of distillation. My advice to people in quick commerce right now is the convenience is not enough. It's not a differentiating feature. You need to be focused on the customer experience and every piece of that customer experience. And I'm still surprised that it seems like there's not a lot of I know I talk about it all the time, but there's not a lot of people talking about that. They're talking about other aspects of the business. I look at this as, listen, get to the customer and then back the business up from there. What is that, what does the handoff look like? What does the packaging look like? What does the assortment look like? Does the technology provide a seamless purchasing experience? Do they get what they want at a price that they're willing to pay? So probably the biggest advice I would have for really anyone within quick commerce is be focused on executing a fantastic customer experience. And listen, I've said this with food delivery for years, and I'm still not sure anyone in food delivery is really executing a great customer experience. But listen, coming out of COVID, I think we saw, some of the food delivery providers are saying, listen, I think Grubhub in particular, that there's a decline in some of these occasions, which is another way of saying, listen, it's becoming more competitive for consumers' dollars. The food industry should have learned that, listen, the convenience won't be enough forever. You won't be able to charge these, in some cases, fairly dramatic add-on costs forever. And it really will come down to, I want hot food and I want a great customer experience. I think the rest of quick commerce, including ultra-fast grocery, should learn this right now and should be very, very focused on the customer experience.
So it's about the product, basically, the customer experience on every end, how the product is delivered, what do you deliver, what is the experience in the app, what is your product that you are selling to the client, because it's not a Coke or it's not a Red Bull, it is actually this whole way of new procurement, I guess, new fulfilling of your daily needs.
If you as an operator, as a CEO or managing director of an ultra fast grocery, if you allow this to become about, I bring Diet Coke to you quickly, it's a race to the bottom, because then you're going to get into a position where the value add isn't there, because everyone is getting you Diet Coke quickly. And it's just too easy to compare prices. You should be looking at how you can differentiate your service through, the assortment, hyper focused on the quality and uniqueness of the assortment. We talked before Buyk having, really being the first here in the US to have private label offerings. This is a lesson learned from our founders. Focus on partnerships, like we had a partnership with Pat LaFrida to provide best-in-class meat and many more. And then the customer experience. Is the app easy to use? Does it learn a customer's preference? Are you using things like machine learning to really provide a tailored, really cultivated app experience? And then, the assortment that backs that up. And then last mile that exceeds customers' expectations. Now, I don't think as a customer, I necessarily need to get my product in 10 minutes. And I think we're already seeing that some of the players here in the US are saying, listen, 10 minutes is not realistic, and it may not be the right thing for our couriers. And, listen, after you create a great customer experience, you better make sure that you've got a great employee experience, in particular the couriers. But maybe the SLA needs to be 30 minutes, 30 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever that is. It needs to be a great customer experience, and the individual who's receiving that product has to be wowed if you're going to have a business that's going to scale years to come.
And what about the numbers? Because the great customer experience can be built at the expense of the investor money once again, right? And the customer experience is quite vague kind of target to try to hit, because for everyone it can be quite subjective, right? But the numbers are the numbers. And if you are creating something very great for the customer, if you're losing $100 on the order, it's not really an interesting business case, right? What would you suggest in terms of the profitability, and actually what should companies focus on in terms of like having the numbers straight and having the understanding of the numbers? Which factors should they look at the most, for example?
Yeah, so I would say a couple of pieces of advice. I worry about overly incentivizing customers to join your platform where you're building a roster of users, but you're using users who only look at you as a discount service. Incentivizing someone with a first order, I think that makes sense, right? Especially since there's still such a need to educate people on ultra fast, right? So listen, you give them that first discounted order, you execute your SLA, whether that's 10, 15, 20, or 30 minutes, they're blown away and they begin to trust service. I still think that that's a good use of discount. But paying for conspicuous advertising, I'm hearing customer acquisition costs north of $100 per user with ongoing discounts to, kind of achieve a KPI that can be shown to investors. Hey, look at the order frequency. Right. But if I'm an investor, the first thing I would say is, show me the order frequency that doesn't have a discount tied to it. And that's where I come back to, if you're focused on a great customer experience, including the assortment, including the app, including that, last handoff at their apartment or place of business, build a database of users who love your customer experience, not ones that love your discount. So, that to me is kind of the first piece of advice that I would give. The second piece of advice, and I have said this for, I bet you 7 years, where, kind of restaurant delivery, when it started, there were take rates that were north of 30%. And I remember restaurants just saying, but I don't make any money on that transaction. And I'd say, then don't do it. You have to at least have transactional level economics. Okay. If you're selling after maybe that first incentivized discount, just to get their name and have them experience your SLA and have them look at your assortment, if after that you're still losing money just on a gross margin basis, or gross margin plus maybe the last mile piece, don't do it. I would not encourage people in quick commerce for any length of time to be having negative transactional level economics. Now, I think four-wall EBITDA is something that you can grow into with the number of orders, right? So maybe the net proceeds from transaction are quite small, and you have to aggregate 250 orders to 400 orders a day, depending on where you are, what the fixed costs are, what the labor costs are. But if you aren't making a net value on a transaction, my advice is you shouldn't be doing it, or you shouldn't be doing it for more than that first transaction. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Right. I mean, the market is learning. And if previously, a couple months ago, it was still a huge trend of expansion, and we will add new categories, we will just outgrow you in numbers so that we get another round. Right now, you actually show what is under the trunk and what you have been doing all this time besides spending money on the billboards and the downloads of the app. And we will see a lot of differentiations, I believe, on this side for many companies, and bigger consolidation speed, because all these companies that basically provide only the infrastructural value basically have no brand and have no customer experience. Those will be sold for parts. And it's not about how big your numbers are, but how efficient your numbers are. And if it even makes sense to scale the numbers that you have right now, and this base makes sense to build on.
So let me, as I've mentioned, I'm still a raving fan of quick commerce, and I still love ultra fast grocery. As you mentioned, Buyk is currently in Chapter 11, so it's not operating any longer. But I am now addicted to this service, so it's gone from a want to more of a need. So was in New York, and I had first experienced ultra fast grocery when I was working in Germany last year. So our mutual admiration for Kagan and what he's built in Gorillas, I experienced in Germany. So I had the Gorillas app on my phone this week, and I went in. I had to change my German address to my Manhattan address. And without a discount, I went and I placed an order for snacks and drinks. Was staying in Manhattan and had kind of a long day ahead of me. And my order arrived ahead of schedule. It arrived in 11 minutes. The courier was super friendly and pleasant. The paper products were robust, meaning, I ordered Diet Coke and Red Bull and like Fiji water. So these are like heavy bags, and I didn't have to worry about them breaking as I went back up to the whatever 29th floor or wherever I was on. The bags were logoed Gorillas, and there was a thank you postcard that somebody, hey, thanks for your order. And this to me is an example: great branding, great execution, exceeded my expectations, and I would use them again whether or not I get a discount. So where I am now is I'm a fan of that service and a fan of Gorillas. And now, a week from now, my app's going to geolocate me when I go back into Manhattan. And they don't have to say, James, if we buy your loyalty, will you use us? They can just remind me, hey, don't you want more Red Bull? And I do, and I'll use them. So I think Kagan and his team in Manhattan are executing against a pretty nice customer experience. I like their assortment. It certainly had all of the items I was looking for. They were easy to find. There was no friction in the entire customer journey. And kind of brick by brick, they're going to build me into a loyal customer. And I think that's a good route to follow for folks.
Right. I also have experienced Gorilla service multiple times in London and Berlin. And I also believe that from the marketing perspective, from the brand perspective, especially with the new gear guys that you have on the streets, they are really doing a very good job with the bringing the customer experience. What do you think in general from the market right now and the market players that we currently have in Europe and in the United States? How do you think will it turn out in a year? Who do you think will be the biggest one? Who do you think will be the one catching up on that, and why?
So listen, I think there's some super smart people out there, and Kagan is one, and Gorillas is going to be here in a year, and they're going to be here in 3 years. And I think he's got while he's very focused on kind of what really matters, I think he also has built a team that are looking at ways to leverage their business in creative ways. So certainly I believe Gorillas will be around. GoPuff will be around. They're obviously going through kind of, let's call it this honing, where yes, there's been some right sizing of the organization. They've made some looks like really smart strategic hires in leadership. So I certainly believe we'll continue to see GoPuff, and Getyear certainly just. Listen, they've got a lot of money, they've got a lot of funding, and I believe they'll be around as well. Now, let's talk about something that doesn't really exist, and that's, someone who comes in and leverages software as a solution and basically says, I'm not going to build a dark store. I'm going to leverage the tens of thousands of bodegas that are in Europe, or the tens of thousands of bodegas that are across the United States, but I'm going to create a best-in-class marketplace that links delivery personnel, whether they're in a car, on a scooter, or on a pedal assist bike. I'm going to link a network of those last mile professionals under a 1099 agreement, which we know works. It may not be ideal, but it certainly works. And I'm going to link them with this network of existing inventory providers, whether the inventory is hot food, whether it's grocery, whether it's convenience, whether it's dry cleaning, whether it's jewelry. If you look at that, it's CapEx light and has the ability to really scale across the market very, very quickly. So, that's not too dissimilar from what Instacart has done here in the US. And Instacart really doesn't have a conspicuous competitor on a global basis. And I think there's an opportunity there, and there's a lower barrier to entry because you don't have the CapEx associated with the dark stores. And I think we talked about it last time. Others in the industry have talked about kind of this melding of, whether it's hot food delivery, whether it's packaged goods. Listen, quick commerce, I want my dry cleaning, I want a Pat LaFrida cheesesteak, I want a Nathan's hot dog, and I want my Red Bull. And I don't want to have to pick 3 different providers or 3 different apps. So I think there's room for kind of a marketplace solution that links providers with the couriers and is really focused on building a great virtual customer marketplace.
But isn't it what basically DoorDash is doing right now, and both Uber and Grubhub are integrating and partnering with Buyk and DoorDash, also providing their last mile as a service solution to bodegas and any other restaurants, partnering with Byk and whatnot. Uber partnership with GoPuff, and actually, I believe GoPuff is also doing this marketplace solution on their app, having their couriers deliver not just from their own dark stores. So it kind of already is there. Do you think that the market needs another one, like a new one, a better technology, or what do you mean?
I think there is an opportunity for another or other, meaning more than one providers to come in that either look at other areas of quick commerce that haven't been addressed yet. Like I said, there's a lot more that I would like to be brought to me rapidly. And I'm going to identify the James Walker identification of rapid means I want it before end of day. Okay. There's all kinds of things that my preference would be to get them in the same day,
right,
that currently aren't contemplated by any of the amazing providers. The DoorDash team, brilliant. They've done great things. They're good people. They're smart people. The Instacart team, similar admiration for what they've done. But listen, there's a lot more than just grocery, food, and alcohol that I want to be brought to me rapidly. And technology today in general has a very low barrier to entry. So having a company come in where the capital is deployed against marketing and building awareness, that comes in and partners with other retailers, yes, the hot food, and yes, the grocery, and yes, the alcohol, because those certainly are high frequency, rapid delivery items. But I think there's a lot more that could go into that. So yes, I think there's room for more marketplace operators who come in, who link these other services and retailers with customers.
Interesting point. But what do you think from the perspective of the market capacity and having enough infrastructure? Because one of the basic things that I believe is slowing down the market is that it's so early. You don't have enough time to build enough micro fulfillment centers, to build the infrastructure of operating it. And I mean the courier net, and building the right, you test and learn which areas work, which areas work better, and how to build this infrastructure of yours, of this last mile logistics that will bring you the results of that. Do you think that it is still going to be the struggle that we will see for the companies that they need to catch up to? Or it's already going to be the game of more categories rather than building this product before going into wider space?
Listen, I don't see software as a major issue here, right? Technology has a low barrier to entry. There's so many just amazing programmers and engineers that you're able to tap into that are able to kind of bring things to life. So I think if I was looking at starting a company in this space, I would be focused on the assortment for my marketplace. And I would try to sew up as many major partnerships from a supplier standpoint that I possibly could, right? The big names in retail that don't currently have a last mile same day solution, I would be at their corporate office trying to sew those up. But you highlight probably the biggest. I don't want to use the word problem, and I don't necessarily see it as an opportunity. I think if there's a limiting factor and something that has not been resolved yet, I think globally, it is that last mile piece, right? There are drones, but the drones don't work in urban areas. There
Mm-hmm.
are autonomous vehicles, but the autonomous vehicles, it's not yet a proven technology. There are pedal assist bikes, but they have a limit of, maybe a mile and a half. There's a number of different ways from a vehicle or technology standpoint, but a lot of them are still very labor dependent in a very difficult labor market. So if there's an area of quick commerce, same day delivery, that is, I think, ripe for innovation and really super creative minds, I think it is in that last mile piece, because currently I'm not aware of a solution that you can say it works in an urban area, it works in a suburban area, it works in the US, it works in Amsterdam, it works in London. There's a lot of different pieces that can be brought together. And maybe that's the answer, that there won't be a panacea, that there won't be a single silver bullet that gets every product to
Right.
everyone's home, in which case, it becomes a sophisticated logistics opportunity where these companies, whether they're just doing the software, kind of networking,
Mm-hmm.
whether they own every piece the way, say, Gorillas and GoPuff does, I think there's still a lot of work to be done there and ripe for innovation.
Absolutely. As a last question, I know you're limited on time today. I wanted to ask you about the role of the bigger players that are tapping into the market. And I mean, Amazons and Googles of the world, because we already see quite bigger steps of both of these
Yep.
brands into the market. And one of the biggest news, I believe, that was recently is that Google actually announced and launched their last mile delivery platform that they are providing as a service to bodegas or restaurants if they want to organize their last mile delivery. Do you think that these big guys with big money are going to bring rather a push to the industry and help everyone to get more efficient, to spread the word, to teach the customer, or it can rather also kind of kill the vibe as these companies can burn more money, bring more marketing budgets and whatnot?
I really like this question. So I'm going to go back to distillation. Let's just boil this down. What does Google and Amazon bring? They certainly bring a lot of money, but having said that, there's already billions being
Mm-hmm.
deployed in this space. So I don't think their war chest of funds is a particular differentiator for the two companies you mentioned. What I do think is a differentiator is lots of mature, very clean data. I mean, these guys know everything about me. They know, that what I eat and when I eat and when I go to bed, when I stop using electronics, how to influence click through. And, that's incredibly powerful. So what these companies may figure out is, the way they've built such just huge global businesses is by monetizing against that data. That's really what these guys do, right? They've got lots
Yeah.
of data. And where Amazon and Google find partners to do different things, they may come in and say, listen, we like what this quick commerce company is doing. They've figured out the last mile, or they figured out as much as anybody has at this stage. We like the management team. They seem to have figured out the logistics, but what we can drop over the top is this massive umbrella, this just incredibly sophisticated database of customer details that's going to allow them to monetize. So first of all, I'm not surprised that they're looking at this, right? Because they're only one step away already.
They're already deep in the waters, I think,
Yeah. So
quite obviously.
I don't know that I would characterize their involvement as disruption. It probably falls more into the category of consolidation.
Right. It's kind of like a natural way
Sure.
for them to go into the place that has enough interest for them to look at them.
Yeah. So it comes back to, if I'm not a recipient of their partnership. Okay. So if I'm not running a company that gets the phone call from Google or Amazon saying, James, we want to partner with you, but I'm on the outside of that, it doesn't change my answer as to what James Walker is recommending. What I'm going to focus on is creating a differentiated, fantastic customer experience. And I'm going to look for unique partnerships and a curated assortment, a fantastic, from the minute they load my app to whatever product that's being delivered to wherever they want it delivered within the SLA. I want every bit of that to be a fantastic customer experience. And I think that's a way to differentiate yourself, create a loyal, profitable customer base, regardless of these giant entrants into the market.
Absolutely. And what we definitely agree on, that quick commerce and last mile delivery, definitely, regardless of the current turbulence and regardless of the current rumors on what is happening with the model, it is definitely having the bright future. We definitely already see a lot of examples reinforcing it. The amounts of money, the amounts of talent flowing in the industry is still not stopping. It's just everyone needs to be more considerate and wise right now. It's not about hype, it's about what you can actually bring on the table and build your value on.
Yeah, I think that's right. Listen, it's going to come down to supply and demand, right? There's going to be an equilibriate, it's going to equilibrate. Customers want it, and currently they're enjoying these services at a discount. Some of them will fall out if the discounts go away, but you begin to see more normative demand for these types of services. But I don't see an end in the demand, so I don't see an end in the opportunity to supply the demand.
Absolutely, absolutely. Great point. Thank you very much for this conversation. Pleasure as always, informative as always. Guys, share this video, like and subscribe. Thank you, James. And if you want to say something in the end.
No, just I'm happy to see you, and always enjoy our conversations.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Great. Thanks.